Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 19th, 2024. I'm Benji Fisher, still trying to remember to say 2024, not 2023. I'm moderating. Also here are Ralph Kohler, who's sharing his screen, and he'll start off the discussion. Simo Helston and Thomas Howell. Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay. I've revisited the reorganized block items in the administration menu meta issue a week or two ago and noticed that there are still a few issues idling, either postponed or waiting for comments. We've worked a few months ago on. Issue number is 3318110. Reorganized block items in an administration menu, meta issue. And I think there are three issues we could quickly go through. Two are in core and one is in the admin toolbar contrib module issue queue. The first one is I have to admit I really noticed it today for the first time. Basically, it shouldn't be postponed anymore, but in general, I think it might be a good idea to have a quick discussion if it makes sense at all to add such a local action. The issue number is 333673. I paste quickly that in the chat. Add a local action on the block library. Nothing happened in there. It was postponed on revisit the redirect to add block from in add block content form, an issue that got in 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, and therefore it would be unblocked for now. But I'm not entirely sure what block library refers to, if they mean the block, if they mean content block or if they mean, the block layout page, and adding a local, because here is no local action yet, while there it is. So probably they're referring to the block layout, but I'm not sure. And I thought I'd just briefly bring that one up. And any questions?
Okay. So can you show the screen again?
Which,
Right. So is that the right screen? It says add a local action on the block library to add block. Yeah, so I think this is the right page. And that link, it's sort of styled as a button, but add content block. I think that's referred to as an action link. That's not a local action.
oh, okay.
A local action would show up as a tab or a sub-tab. So there aren't really any comments on this. They just updated the title a couple of times. I'm just trying to figure out what the intent is, and
Yep, that wasn't clear to me either, so.
And if you go to the issue and click on View History,
US, oh yeah, there it is.
there again are not any substantive changes. But you can click on Compare. I just did that, but I'm not sharing my screen, so. The other thing we might do, and you can click on the previous difference link. The other thing we might do to try to figure out the intent of this issue is to look at the issue it references. It says it's a follow-up created from that. So we could look at that issue and try to figure out whether there's some discussion there saying what this is about.
Mm.
And in fact, that link saying it's fault created, it's referring to comment 141. Can we get a follow-up to add a local action on the block library to add block?
Mm.
And it would be postponed.
Yeah, that's that issue, where it is. If you create a block on here, it's the save and configure and save. That was that change. Was not sure for a second. But I think maybe we should go to the next issues because it's not that clear.
I'm wondering if, because we have add content, it has a list of different content types we can add. So if we can have content block types, I wonder if it could refer to having a somewhere list of which kind of content type, content blocks you can create.
There's just one configured, but I think that is already in place.
Yeah, I was just thinking if it would actually be a local task or local action. No, it's local tasks. Is it local actions? Do we have that term? But anyway, I was thinking if it would be any kind of tab, it would be a little bit out of place to have just so even then, but so that it would have some kind of content that's kind of general to all blocks. Not sure.
Oh, and for the sake of the recording, I'll acknowledge that Offer Shaw has joined us. Good to see you. Ralph, can you go back to the fixed issue that this one was started from? And if you is this 2862564? So no, I'm sorry, not this issue, but here, I'll put the link in the chat, what I mean. So comment 144 there, I think might be relevant. You have to scroll down a little bit. It says, sorry, I should have been more detailed why I think it blocks it. One issue blocks another. When you click add custom block from the block library, you're sent to the place block form if you have administer blocks permission. If you don't, you end up on a 404 page. So the UX is pretty bad. We want to expand the permissions so that you can create /edit/delete custom blocks without the administer blocks permission. So without that change, the experience will be pretty bad for those without the administer blocks permission. Granted, all this hinges off us getting the permission change in too, but I think that's our next priority. So I think that's mostly changed. The I mean, if you click on the add block link, you get taken to block/add. And if you create a block, then when you save that form, you now have two options, save or save and configure. One of them returns you to the primary button, save, returns you to the list of blocks. And the other, save and configure, I think takes you to the block layout page. So yeah, I think this issue is obsolete. The issue we started with. But Ralph, you already said you wanted to move on, right?
Yeah. At least I think someone should comment and that Stephen can chime in and say it's still relevant or if it should be closed, if it's outdated.
Yeah, I'll post a comment in the right Slack channel to ask both Stephen and LA Roland.
Yeah.
Take a look at this.
Probably the best way how to approach it. Okay. Yeah, the next one is a bit more relevant and has a bit more things to discuss. Issue number is 3318558. Adjust the block terminology in Layout Builder to align with block and block content changes. I scroll down to the summary. Basically, there are several points. Block issue, get comment wrong. Before the issue can, there are a few open questions. The point is, there are a few inconsistencies. At the moment, you have the field here is called add block. Over here, you have choose a block, then you have create a content block, while underneath you have some sections called just announcements, then content block, then content fields, even though the top title is called choose a block, and then again, forms, list views, menus, system. It's quite inconsistent. Also taken in consideration, over here, the basically reusable blocks are called content blocks now, but then in the context of Layout Builder, you have inline blocks, which isn't mentioned anywhere, and the behavior is different basically. and those are not reusable. And the open questions, the points are: rephrase the overall title, choose a block to something else, because strictly speaking, the user is able to choose between blocks and fields, even though I've learned those fields are, again, in air quotes, special, because there are, again, even blocks, which I didn't know back when I wrote that. But the question is it necessary to know that distinction for the user? And the add block button should be changed accordingly, since you're able to add blocks and fields there as well. The second point is append block to every block category. Then you have content fields, content blocks, user fields, user blocks, develop blocks, help blocks, and so on. It would be clearer to the user without any ambiguity. Since there are cases with, the third point is, since there are cases with only a single item in a category, it might be considered to add a singular and plural form to the category title. So based on the count, it would be user block or user blocks. And one nitpick, the category title core is written in lowercase, but all other terms are uppercase at the beginning of each category title. Those are the points that are still in question. But in general, the main problem that also surfaced in the discussions we had in user meetups is the difference between inline blocks and those content blocks, in air quotes, the reusable ones. And that distinguishing is quite unclear at this point, and even to back then to experienced Drupal users. Any question?
Simo has a question or comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, I think we were looking at the issue of converting not non-reusable blocks into reusable blocks, in the context of block layout. So is this something that touches that topic, so that there could be some changes, so a block could change from one category to other category from the proposed categories here? Am I clear? Does that make sense?
So you mean that what currently is, for example, somewhere down there in section, for example, forms, that it moves to that is basically in one section, let's say announcements, and that it moves to content block, or the other way around, based on that setting, to changing it from inline to reusable. Do you mean that?
Yeah. So in that way, if the person changes that, then it would be something that first is found in one menu and then it's found in another. So it might be a little bit less confusing if there would be one menu, like one category of blocks to choose from. But then again, depends very much on the amount of content.
No, I don't think that's an issue. And an inline block is a block that's not reusable. So if I have 2 pages and I have an inline block on one of them, that is not available to the layout on the second page.
Yeah, so it would be like if you convert it to reusable, then it would be only then it would show up. So it wouldn't change place. It would just appear as a new option.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good.
Research the issue. I think you're referring to that one.
I have a question about the content block. We're saying content block is the non-reusable block?
No, the content block here is the reusable one. I
And
go
where do
in
we
here.
add the inline one? The inline one is the non-reusable?
Test here is the, oops. I have to reload. Okay. Oh yeah, no, there are two block content blocks. Yeah, those two are the reusable ones. Content block.
And
see
the way to get an inline block, one that's not reusable, is through the layout builder when you click on create content block.
So that's what I wanted to ask. The button on the top of the list is not the same as the content block below?
Right. So the menu we're now looking at, which we get to from create content block, lets us create a non-reusable block.
Right. Okay. Very
That-
confusing. Thank you.
And that'll be used only on this page. Yeah, I think when we were discussing that other issue, one of the points I made is that anything we can do to make it more visible that there is a distinction between these two types of blocks is a win.
Oh, but both of them are called content block? Like that's because they are content block, they have anything else that define them to between the top button blocks we can create and the blocks that are listed under content block here, the test and the other letters.
Yeah, I think internally they're very similar. They're stored in the same database tables and so forth. There's just one little Boolean field that says reusable or not. So in the database, they're very closely related, but in the user interface, they're very far apart.
Okay. And are they not reusable just to make things less cluttered so they don't appear everywhere?
Yeah, a lot of sites use Layout Builder heavily, and so they have 100 different pages, and each page has 10 different inline blocks, and you don't want those 1,000 blocks to show up on your custom block library. You only want the ones that are designed to be reusable to show up in the custom block library. And here I am using the old term, of course, the block library.
And so this issue is also talking about that, or it talks about other things? The issue we're discussing now.
The issue we're discussing is, I think, just about the terms we use on this page, the interface text. Is that right, Ralph?
Yep. It's only about the terminology.
Yeah, like I wish there was, instead of create content block, which sounds like the developer terms, it would just tell me, right? Somehow that would be very clear. Create this one piece of content for this landing page that you won't see anywhere else. But in 2 words.
Yes, that's the challenge. Say that in 2 words.
Yeah, but at the moment, create content block with a new terminology, it says create a reusable block, but then it doesn't show up under content block. That's problem also.
Okay. So
That
yes, is that okay to annotate? I'll use the disappearing one. So is this one that is changing to reusable?
Which one? I don't see anything.
Do you see my?
No, I see. Okay.
That is the one changing to reusable?
No, those are already reusable.
No,
Content
the
block.
text.
Ah,
Maybe I misunderstood. You're saying this is changing to reusable? The top one, the create?
No.
No. For the top one, there is no suggestion there yet.
Okay.
But testing it right now, it might be clearer to, instead of create content block, it would be simply create reusable block, even though reusable is never used in the interface yet.
But
And
it's
yeah,
not reusable.
Yeah, that's what my
and
confusion.
sorry, I'm confused. Sorry, no, yeah, non-reusable. I meant non-reusable. Oh, no, create inline block. That was what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah, that would be accurate but confusing
Yep.
because as you say, that's not terminology we use anywhere else in the interface.
Exactly.
Create block for this page.
Do
It's
we
not-
have any pop-up interface we're using elsewhere? Where like inline block would like great because it's 2 words, but then hovering above would like, oh, that's the one that's not reusable. So my question was, do we have any pop-up interfaces in the admin interface?
like you hover over
Yeah.
an eye with a circle around
As like
it.
an eye, yeah, that one.
I don't think we do.
Because I think, yeah.
I guess when you have a link with description text, or title text, the theme could present it that way rather than as text to show on hover. But I think one principle is you should always describe something by what it is rather than by what it's not. So instead of a non-reusable block, I would describe it as create a block for this page, or create block for this page, to save one little word. No one likes that?
Oh, I was muted. I'm like, I like it. I said I like it.
Okay, great. But I think that text wasn't even on the list for this issue. Shall we go through Ralph's recommendations one at a time?
Those aren't all recommendations. And the first point, yeah, it touches both the add block button here, if you see my cursor, my mouse, and as well as the microcopy for create content block. So it was listed, but no recommendation yet. I was just looking for suggestions like you did now.
Okay, so the first item actually does deal with this text we've been discussing.
One detail back then when I wrote it, and I didn't knew about that, basically fields in the context of layer builder are also blocks. Therefore, block would probably work, and searching for a more neutral term would complicate things even further. So probably add block could remain, but yeah, create content block should definitely change. And your suggestion, Benji, from my point of view, is definitely clearer, but I'm not sure if it isn't too lengthy. I'm not sold yet.
So why do you want to change add block? What's wrong?
Back then, my thinking was basically you have here add block, and then in that list you have basically in the third section already something about fields, even though it is talking about blocks, and that is something that confused me when I first started using Layout Builder. You talk about blocks and then you get fields, and that is sort of inconsistent.
Okay, so I would say if that's the confusion, then we should change the labels in the settings tray, and instead of saying content fields, we could say something like field blocks.
Yep.
Because everything in there is in terms of the backend, everything is a type of block. So I guess what is the mental model being used here? In Layout Builder, you have sections and you have blocks inside the sections. And maybe that's not the best terminology, but that's the current terminology. And I don't see a compelling reason to change it.
I agree.
I assume that when Layout Builder was being designed, they considered calling it sections and subsections and decided against it. But anyway, I don't see a compelling reason to change it from add section and add block. So I think we should focus on the labels in this menu. Yeah, choose a block. Now, there's also an inconsistency. Create content block is a full sentence. Everything else there is a noun. Ralph, do you not have the option to collapse these lists?
There's no indication, but it's possible to collapse. Yep.
Oh, that's very strange because I see little triangles that go horizontal or vertical, depending on whether the list is open or not. And I assume we're both using the Claro theme.
Yep.
I'm using Umami.
I'm using standard.
So instead of create content block, create block for this page is maybe a little too long. New block for this page is the same number of words, but it's a few characters shorter. And it would be a noun like the other headers. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe consistency isn't what we want because that is fundamentally different from the other options. And I actually don't mind that it's a little bit, either option is a little too long. I think that this is the most commonly used option. It should stick out from the others. I would not mind if the text wraps to a second line. Could you use your browser tools and show us what it would look like if we said create block for this page?
1 second.
On a side note, I just found it interesting how that added sidebar seems to be like older theming. It doesn't look like Claro or anything.
Yep.
Yes, the settings tray, which does a hard reset and basically ignores the theme. Oh, the text doesn't even wrap. And if it were new block for this page, a noun, rather than create, it would be a few letters shorter. Is that
Maybe
too long?
Would add block to this page be okay?
Well, we get here by clicking the add block. I guess add or create. Where do we stand on that?
Oh, this one is the inline. I'm so confused.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's
Okay.
the one is the inline. And that's the thing, I think that's my main problem with add, create, or new block for this page. You communicate that a block is created for on this page, but it isn't necessarily clear that is something different than a content block. Or on the other hand, add, or was it create a content block or create an inline block? Create an inline block would be the more proper label, but it is more or less meaningless since it wasn't used anywhere else in the interface yet, and the user isn't faced with it, so it isn't that clear. But I think it should be somehow established that there are two kind of blocks with different behaviors, and it is not just that it's reusable, it is also implications in regards of caching. Eclipse Gisei, how is it pronounced? Gisei?
GC?
Gisei, sorry. Mentioned that that's the problem if you have a long list of reusable blocks, then creating a new block, the creation of a new block sometimes takes seconds or even longer because all the cache has to be rebuilt on creation for everything, and that is an implication, and that's the reason why those inline blocks got created, because those don't have that kind of caching. As far as I understood it, it was still above my head.
And I see in the chat offer suggested exclusive block. I think there are too many other words, meanings of the word exclusive. I don't like that label. And it's not clear what it excludes. Thomas?
I feel like we run the risk of being too specific and confusing a lot of people. I think that ad block for this page is very simple, and that through experience, people will learn what that means, but it is self-explanatory and it is accurate. Putting more words in, like just pretend we put an exclusive, I wouldn't know what that meant if I were to read that. And I'm not
Yeah,
doing a good job
I
of
mean,
explaining, but yeah,
no, I think all of us feel the same pain. And yeah, like we want to stay short as much as possible because it's just a sidebar. And we know after 2 or 3 times, you'll know what you're doing anyway. Yeah, don't know what would be the solution for that. Would do we have like a help block would help here or something like somewhere to explain a little bit more on the different options? What would happen if you do this or that?
Yeah, I don't see any links directly to the help page for Layout Builder. I suppose we can get there in a few clicks from the admin toolbar. You can click on help. And I don't think there's a topic that's really helpful. You might have to click on the link for Layout Builder, which you'll only know if you know.
But if you take a look, over here, only under managing blocks, only content blocks are explained, while on layout builders, blocks aren't a real topic at all.
Yeah, and maybe that's where more clarification would come by adding a section to explain that. It's so very useful on most websites and somehow link the sidebar to because it's not a page, it is a sidebar, and we're so limited in space to allow additional context.
One thought, because I still think, for me, it's still the most puzzling thing is, and which isn't taken good care of, is making the difference between content block and inline blocks more prominent. And at the moment, layout builder and that issue is the only place it's currently surfacing in the UI. But it might be an idea that for one, there are 2 issues, follow-up issues opened. Oops, where I am. For one, having at the moment, per default, it is not active, but there, if you update the view, or I can quickly try, views, content blocks, expose filter, apply and save. For one, have the option that the concept of reusable and non-reusable is exposed on that block content page as well. so that you have the option to see all blocks, the reusable ones and the non-reusable ones. And the other point would be on the, I can look up the issue numbers later. Something, for example, that was, I think Irina had the idea back in the conversations we had to add a reports page with all available blocks for a site, and that you would be able to see there also the difference that you have inline blocks and reusable content blocks. And that way, both concepts would be more familiar to people. And yeah, and think also from the perspective of performance, it is also necessary that people know if they have many reusable blocks or a smaller number and more manageable number. Therefore, I think it would make sense to make that concept more familiar to people. Oops.
Okay, Offer, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, I think what you just said now gave me a light bulb. Is it possible, I think, by not having create content block on top, make it part of that section of content blocks? And over there, I think it will become much easier to differentiate. It's in the same section, but we have the section of repeatable or like add inline new one. I feel that would give it more context to understand how different it is from anything else you can find there. Yeah, and just like not, I feel like by having it the plus on top, maybe was that done because it's the most used button ever, or
I suspect
that-
so.
okay. And perhaps, so what if we keep that there and adding content block, maybe, I guess that's alphabetical. I thought maybe like moving the content blocks that are below closer to that button. So it is a section of content block section.
Yeah, but that button doesn't create blocks that go into there.
Yeah, true. It's just I'm saying like these are like, I'm trying to find like still easier ways to differentiate between what's the difference between what you're creating.
Uh,
Once you create a inline block, do you see it in the list at all? Or
No.
it's just placed in the layout builder?
As you
That's
can
all.
see, it's only the non-reusable
Yeah.
block that was created when I clicked there, but this doesn't show up over here.
And there is a way to after I created it to make it reusable?
No, but there's an issue to add that
Yeah,
option.
It would become a possibility. Okay.
that's the issue 2999491. I've linked in the chat. Add reusable option to inline block creation.
Because my thought is if it would become just a setting and all blocks are the same, but they have a Boolean, maybe then we can revisit the interface. Maybe that would make more sense.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to consider the user interface. If that change ever makes it in. I think it should make it in. I wish someone would do some more work on it. But we have less than 10 minutes left. I'd like to move on to some of Ralph's other points and see maybe some of those are easier to resolve.
Yeah, the next point was just also rooted in the point of that you have fields there. So having having announcement block, content fields, what you suggested to rename to field blocks, Benji.
Right.
form blocks, list blocks, but yeah, then it's getting redundant.
Yeah, so the advantage of that is that it sort of clarifies that these are all different types of blocks. So it would help with your confusion about fields. These are
Yep.
actually blocks based on fields. The drawback, of course, is that it's just the same word being used over and over and over again. So
Yeah, but on the other hand, having just announcement, content block and field block, and then again forms, lists, menus is also confusing. So I think since it would be front loaded, it could be an acceptable drawback, meaning using announcement blocks, content block, field block, and so forth.
yeah, for the sake of this discussion, could you collapse all of those? And I would say if we're going to do that, we would also have form blocks, list blocks, menu blocks, system blocks, user blocks.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Offer.
Yeah, sorry, not sure if I'm going back to the previous one, but would just saying add content help at all without using the word block?
That runs into the problem that content often means node.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks.
But how would you deal with user fields?
User field blocks, I guess.
As a user field block, content field block. Okay. Yeah, because your initial suggestion was field block as the replacement for content field. But there I forgot that there's also user fields, and therefore tricky.
Yeah, so I guess the distinction between those two is that when you're looking at a node, that node can have fields on it, and Layout Builder creates a block for each of those fields that you can then place. But if you're a user, even if you're an anonymous user, your user object can also have fields attached to it. And those can also be placed by Layout Builder.
The third point was yeah, singular and plural forms.
So you're moving on to your third point?
Yeah. Or sure, not sure. Or we could stay with point 2 first. Just close to the hour, therefore I start.
What are the cases where there's only one item in a group? I guess there's only one user block by default.
Announcements.
Right.
And user and workspace at the moment.
So this is a case where things are being grouped by the module they come from, which is often a pattern we try to avoid, right? We try to focus on the task we're doing rather than where it comes from in the back end. In this case, I don't think that's a particularly bad thing. I think that it makes some sense to group them by the module that provides them. So on the singular plural thing, maybe this is something we can resolve earlier. I'm not sure I understand it though. So what would you change if you wanted to make it singular for these two cases where it is singular?
Back there.
Or are you suggesting you'd be changing the grouping or something?
The suggestion was simply based on the count of items inside a group, either block or blocks. But yeah, it's too much. I think that could be left out.
Yeah, I guess if we were to add block to every item, every heading, form blocks, list blocks, menu blocks, then we might make that S conditional or have the translatable markup variant that's for things that change depending on whether they're singular or plural. Okay, we are running up against the hour. We have some new ideas. I don't think we have any firm recommendations, do we?
Not really. Not really.
I think we'll have to leave it there for now. Any closing words from anyone? All right, then maybe we'll think of something in the week to come. And well, until next week, thanks for coming.
Have a nice weekend.
Thanks, Benji.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, Benji.